Ubiquitous language and bounded contexts help us work with complex domains. They provide information we can use to improve the architecture, team structures, and communication with stakeholders and within a team. They increase our understanding of the domain our product supports. They can help decrease the lead time. Yet, the question is, how to use these powerful patterns and not get overwhelmed. Will dummies understand strategic domain design? Sebastian Malaca argues that they will. He knows what he's talking about. He's an experienced architect and leader, specializing in object-oriented programming and design, as well as techniques and practices to create high-quality code. Sebastian, the microphone is yours.
Hi everyone, I really would like to have this voice, unfortunately not. Okay, so today I will tell you something about strategic domain-driven design, about concepts, about the problems they are solving, and what you can do with them after they are onboarded, after they are defined. Who am I? It was already explained, but what I'm doing, regardless the role I'm taking, I'm helping teams to migrate from improve their legacy systems to make it easier to maintain. I'm helping them to introduce quality of software and code into existing applications. This is what I'm doing for a living, regardless whether I'm trainer, consultant, or architect in current place of work. What is in our agenda? So I will show you how usually people design their system, design their domain. Then I will explain you what's the problem with that. What kind of issues with such design we may gonna face. Then a little bit of theory about DDD strategic patterns, and then we will do another try to design requirements in better way. Example is on my GitHub, so you can take a look at that later. Upfront apologize, the code is in Java, but don't worry, the only relevant thing is the class names and the place where they are. The code is meaningless. Okay, so let's start with the example. How usually we are designing our domain. This is our domain for the purpose of this lecture. So we will design the shop. There will be some product selling, buying products, and so on and so on and so on. We won't analyze all the features. We will stick to the few of them. We will analyze registering new user account and other. We will take a look at them and we will think how we can create the classes that will reflect our domain, how we will map that into our code. This is our task for today. I won't think about frameworks, libraries, mechanics that are around that code. It's only about domain, only or. So first try. How it gonna looks like. So hope the code is visible. Hope you can see that. Cool. So this is the list of our requirements, and let's go through the changes one by one. So first thing is no context. This is our place. We will put everything into our domain because we want to keep it clean. Yeah, so it will be separated from all the libraries and the frameworks. Even though it doesn't use bounded context and Ubiquitous language, DDD strategic patterns, I still will do my best to keep it as good as possible. So let's check what we can introduce. So first requirement is registering new user account with login and password. So what will gonna happen? Check out revision. And this is our code so far. So registering new user, I want to introduce some service that will register the user. So I'm using the words from the domain. There is registration, there is user account, so I'm creating a user account. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep my code to reflect the domain. Okay. This is okay. Of course, during analysis, I can find additional things. So if I want to keep my user into table users, I know the identifier is required, and if we are registering some account, most probably there will be some login and password. Okay, so this is naive design, but this leads us somewhere. Let's jump to another requirement, creating an employee account. So, business gives me this requirement, and I'm looking at my user account, and okay, so since I already have a user, let's extend that object. Yeah, let's add a user role into that user account. So there will be employee and regular. Okay, we can challenge that name, but it means it's not an employee. And thanks to that, I can recognize whether this is this user who can register themselves, or whether this is employee created by the boss. So employees cannot register themselves. It's someone who is responsible for doing that, and they are allowed for that. Okay, we are still trying to keep a separation here, entry point to our domain, and we have got all the domain objects in here. Of course, during our analysis, talking with business, we found out that each and every employee will have an agreement with us. Makes sense. So we are introducing some optional parameter agreement, because regular users who are registering themselves doesn't need that, won't have it, and our employees, all of them, will have it. Okay, let's add something more. And let's make our domain a little bit bigger. So adding product to the storage. And how I would like to implement that. Our domain gets bigger, so I've got a storage. I'm adding the product to it. Of course, there will be some table for that, identifier. Let's take a look at the product. And when I'm talking with the business, they tell me, okay, so whenever someone have to put the product into the storage, they are interested whether the product is fragile, okay, to not put it on the bottom, rather on the top of the shelf. What is the weight of that, and what is the size of that? And of course, size can be also expanded. So we are making our domain bigger. Okay, so far so good. Let's take a look at other requirement, placing the product on the shelf. Cool, it should be easier. Why is that? Because placing the product on the shelf and storage seems similar, because in storage we are adding the products to it. In the shelf we will do the same. Yeah, shelf ID, products, and adding products. Makes sense. Let's keep the code consistent. It's easier to readable for readability whenever we are making the code consistent. Cool. And what about the product? Product is getting bigger. Why is that? Because business tells us that whenever we are putting the product on the shelf, I don't care about whether it's fragile or not. The most important property is category. Because if I've got teas on one shelf, I will put another tea here. If I've got some waters on another shelf, that the next water will be with the waters, not with the teas. Okay, so I'm making my product bigger. I'm putting yet another attribute there. We are talking about the same product that we were talking when we were thinking about storage. I will store my water somewhere. So for that, I needed those. And when I will pick that from the storage, I will put that on the shelf. This is still the same water, but another property required. So still makes sense. We are making our product, let's say, more complete. And let's add yet another requirement, putting the product to the cart. So, as you may guess, maybe, cart will look similarly to the shelf. Why is that? And to the storage, because we are adding something. So there is a list, we are adding to that list another product. Cool. Still, consistency matters. But when we are thinking about the cart, what additional things we need to decide whether something should be added to the cart or not? So some description. Okay, this is the best water I ever drank. Okay, cool. That's the description. Characteristic, healthy. I don't know, not too big or something like that. And based on that characteristic, I can decide. So my domain gets bigger. I'm trying to reflect, I'm doing really my best to reflect all the requirements in my domain. I'm trying to keep it clean. And my products get it's getting bigger, so I'm gaining better understanding of the product. All the attributes relevant business domain, which is a shop. Another thing, so we are switching a little bit, it's customer pays for the product. Let's get there. Checkout revision. And we've got payment. Okay, so if you are paying, there will be some identifier of the payment because we want to store all the payments somewhere. And if customer is paying for products, to whom they should pay? Us. So we are introducing online shop, but in a form of bank account. We decided for the simplification, we don't need online shop object. We want to have only our bank account. Cool. And right now we assume that whoever is paying, they can only do the transfer from their bank account. So our customers have got bank accounts. Of course, it's still optional, as you can see. Why is that? Because not each and every user required to have a bank account, at least at this point of time. We didn't take that into consideration when we are talking about employees. We don't know, we have got people who are registering themselves, and we don't know whether all of them are our customers. So that's why the bank account, at least for now, based on the requirements we just analyzed, is optional. Another thing, we are extending our user roles because there is customer. I have no clue whether at this point of time it's the same as regular. Okay. And of course, some bank account as well. And additionally, my product grows because I'm paying for, where's the payment? I'm paying for products. Good. Yeah, this is what I want to pay for. So to pay for something, I need to have it price. Makes sense. I cannot pay for something without price. And the last requirement is paying the supplier. So someone is bringing that water to us. We are not producing that water on our own. There is a company who produces Polaris water, and they are delivering that water to us. So we have to pay for that water as well. So this is this requirement. So we are modifying our payment a little bit because it's no longer customer and online shop. This is someone who pays to another person. So we are introducing user account in here. Okay, so we had it covered because all user accounts already have a bank account. Those who requires it, cool. And we are extending our user role. To cover previous requirement, we introduce online shop. So we will have some sort of artificial account for us and supplier, the people to whom we will pay for the items we are selling in our shop. And this is all. I'm trying to keep it clean. Of course, this is naive design, but my goal was to reflect as much the domain language in the code. I did my best. I heard that it's good to keep domain separated. I did my best. So what is wrong in here? Let's get back to the slides. Before what is wrong in here, I can even tell you more. Firstly, we really want to keep the code clean. We put aside our domain. It's isolated. We can really work on encapsulation. So we can introduce rich domain objects that will do the job, will do their work. So I'm not planning to challenge that. We can introduce hexagonal architecture, any kind of port adapters architecture, which are, to make it simple, quite heavy to maintain, but gives you a lot of benefits. I can make it. I can introduce that. I can introduce command query separation to protect my domain even further. I can have it all. I can have really well test coverage and so on and so on. So if I can introduce all of that, what's the problem? So there are a few problems. Firstly, we are missing some words in our domain right now. Just remember that whenever I introduce the shelf, instead of placing the product on the shelf, I keep it consistent with the storage. So that was add word. I remove the placing. I remove the putting in the cart. I'm not putting the product in the cart. Okay, but this is only a word. Maybe. But there is a difference. If I'm adding something to the storage, it means it is not in the shop. I'm adding that. It is in the shop right now. When I'm placing on the shelf, it means it was in the shop, and I'm putting that on the shelf. I was already an owner of that. If I'm putting that into the car, it means it gave me an information that it was already on the shelf. It was visible for our customer. It was not in the storage. It was already visible and possible to buy. I got rid of a word creating. We were registering user, so users can register themselves. Cool. But there was a requirement about creating employee. It's no longer there because we had a method register. What creating means? Employees cannot do that on their own. So create means I'm the one who will create that. And this is not all the words. Some are, some will be covered later. We've got too big and confusing user account. Why is that? Let's take a look at user account. Let's take a look in here. You learn a lot about users in our application, in our shop. But by looking at that class, you have no clue who's supposed to have and who doesn't supposed to have agreement. You don't have a clue why the bank account is not required. You don't have that information. What is even more worrying, it may be somewhere in the code, but maybe not. Maybe it's forever lost. Another thing, we introduced confusing user role. So here, what the regular really means, from the very beginning, I was a little bit worried about this word. Is it the same as customer? Maybe. But we also have got some artificial role, online shop. And the question, when I'm looking at these user roles, right now I know that some of our users can have multiple roles. I still don't know how those roles maps to the attributes I need here. This is not present in here, not visible. You need to read more and more code. This is not like straight go to the user account and just modify. No, you don't have significant and important information in here. And the same happened with the product. Product is also too big a bit right now. From the one side, someone can tell me, okay, we learn a lot about the product. We learn what is needed to operate over the product in our shop. And they are right. But I'm missing the information where particular attributes are needed. Right now, I can use all of them everywhere. So if I'm going to the payment, someone can assume, okay, so Sebastian years ago wrote a product class, let's take a look at the product class, and they will start to wonder, okay, I'm paying for the product. Why I need to know whether it's fragile or not? What for? My way of thinking usually is, if there is a code, there is a justification for that. If there is dependency over some class, most probably, I'm supposed to do my best to make this class precisely to be exactly what is needed for the dependent class, so for the payment. I don't have this information, and I'm not aware right now of the subsets. Just remind how we increase the amounts of attributes in our product. It was about adding to the shelf, adding to the storage, placing on the shelf, adding to the storage, putting into the cart and paying for that. I don't have information what subset of attributes is needed for given operation. And this is maybe not the big deal, because maybe, or maybe not, I will be able to find that information somewhere in the code. But what is the problem? I have got access to all the attributes everywhere, which means I may use it someday, even if I shouldn't. And the last, we do not know what works together. So I just explained that on the level of product. I just explained that on the level of user account. But if we will take a look at our domain, still no clue. And someone can ask, okay, why agreement and product category are in the same place? Why? How agreement interacts with the product category? Have no clue. How user account interact with product? This is mystery. And to find the interaction, the subsets of domain objects that work with each other, I need to read the code. And the information may be in the code or not. So this is the problem. We can really do our best to keep this domain isolated, to work on encapsulation, to introduce the heaviest altirelay we've got, I don't know, CQRS, clean architecture. You can try it all, and you will still have those problems in your code base if you will do that in this way. Okay, so this is about the problem. Before diving into going into solution, let's do a step back and take a look at the theory. Whenever we are solving a problem, and this is regardless the software development, we've got two spaces, problem and solution space. So there is a problem space, our shop. Someone, let's imagine, Sebastian want to have a shop, and I really have those shops, and I want to have an application that will let me to easily manage those shops. So this is my problem space. In the problem space, I have all the business problems we're supposed to solve, which is, in example, a few of our requirements. I've got a problem. I want to hire people. How to? I want to create an employee. How to do that? I don't know yet. I want to make sure that products are placed in the storage. Products are added to the storage. This is my problem. I want to manage that. I want to make sure that products are, once they are in the storage, are placed on the shelf. Those are the problems we've got. And those problems exist regardless the implementation. Implementation is irrelevant. They will be still there. Because even if I decide to not use software, I will still have to sort out solution for that problems. And we are going to solution space. And this is all about our implementation. This is how we are solving the problem. This is why it's really needed, and this is how we want to make it happen. And this is what we did. Our customer gives us a few problems. Our implementation is the code base I just presented. Sometimes we can even divide the problem space into something which is called subdomains to make it more granular. So there are a few from the shop perspective. We want to manage the shop. We want to know where are particular categories of products, where to put new product, and so on and so on. We want to manage the storage. So there are some shelves, big warehouse where we are adding our products, where we are storing them. We want to manage that. We need some accountants to take care of all the payments, invoices, and so on and so on. Why we are dividing the problem space into subdomains? Because thanks to that, the conversations are more consistent. In here, when I will talk with my accountant, I will talk about prices. I will talk about invoices. I will talk about our suppliers. This is accounting. I won't talk about products. They don't care. This is yet another item on the invoice. If I'm talking with someone who is working in the storage, I will talk about them how to efficiently put the product and add them there. But I won't tell them what the product really is, how it's described, what is the price of that product. They don't care. Thanks to the subdomains, I'm using less words. I make it for this particular problem less complex. taking into comparison this. And of course, subdomains can be mapped into implementation. Sometimes we can do as we did on our first try. So we introduce one model, but sometimes we can introduce multiple models. This is quite handy later. But there is great quote, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And this is really true. So remember, this is our way of implementing. So let me give you an example. From the real life, as I said, problem and solution space is from the real life. With my wife, recently we had a problem. We are doing renovation of our kitchen. So the idea is to buy some devices, I don't know, fridge, furnitures, and put them in the room, in the kitchen. So the problem space is fridge, our furnitures with the shelves and so on, with all the equipment with all the details. But for the simplification, we were only wondering where to put particular devices. How we model that? We modeled that quite easily. That was our model. Our, furniture were something like that, another model, with given width and depth, and that was it. Our walls were something like that. Of course, we mapped the window, there was a door in here. This is the model. Is it perfect? Oh, sorry, if you don't, not everyone sees. Okay. Is it perfect? Far from being perfect. This is not door. This is not the window. This is line. This is not the wall. But from the model perspective, it helped us. We were able to plan how those devices and furnitures will gonna land in our kitchen. So model is wrong comparing to reality, but is useful. I didn't have to buy a fridge and move it here. Okay, honey, it doesn't work in here, move it in the other corner. It would be quite nice exercise, but we would waste a lot of time. It was easier. And this is what we are doing with our implementation. We are introducing such models. We don't have to map reality. I know that it was sold years ago that object-oriented programming is about mapping real object into the objects. Yes, but not full reality. We are creating models that solves particular problems. What does it mean? If I'm solving the problem, how to reorganize the kitchen, I'm creating the model that is useful for me. So fridge have got only 2 attributes. Furniture also. To be honest, I can go even farther. I don't need to have differences between those 2, maybe. So models is simplified version of reality. Of course, what's worth to know, sometimes I map one object from reality, real world, like fridge, into multiple models. So here we are planning. Okay, cool. But on the other hand, we've got we need to decide where the shelves that are on the wall should be. So in that case, this model is not sufficient anymore. I need to introduce 3rd dimension. So either I can extend this model, or maybe I will introduce 2nd model that will model the same real objects into something different. Because here I will need a height. Here I had to know what is the width and depth. So multiple models that reflects the same item, the water, it's still fine. Okay, so this is about problem and solution space. So now strategic domain-driven design, how they help us. What is domain-driven design? Some of you maybe heard about the domain-driven design. And the most, I would say, sexy pattern is usually aggregate or bounded context. You don't need to have neither aggregate nor banded contexts. And those are not the most important aspects of domain-driven design. Domain-driven design is mostly about understanding. What I want to do, if I'm introducing domain-driven design, if I've got an accountant, I want to understand what they are telling me. I don't want to map their words into my code. I don't want to map later that code into some documentation. Why is that? I don't know whether you were playing games in Polish, it was telephone, when you are passing the message from one person to another, and usually on the end of the queue, the message was totally different. And this is what we are doing in software development. But our game is a little bit more expensive. Usually it's millions of, pick the currency, however you want. Next stage is the language. Once I understand something, I can finally use the language. And I know the meaning of the words. And the last step is representation. And representation also doesn't end only in the code. It's about documentation if needed. It's about each and every conversation we've got. It's about each and every email. It's each and every page we will gonna create. What are the differences between strategical and tactical? This is close to the code. So here we are really writing the code using DDD patterns. Here we are mostly focused about understanding and boundaries of our understanding. And then later we can use that boundaries to have an idea how to divide our code if we want to do a modular monolith, or how to divide that into services. This is the initial input for that. And today I will tell you only about two strategical patterns. First is the ubiquitous language. Ubiquitous language is the language that describes the domain. The misleading thing for me on the very beginning was word ubiquitous. Why is that? Because ubiquitous, it means it's everywhere. And I really thought that everywhere means that my goal is to create the language that can be used everywhere in my domain. Our domain is shop. It wasn't true. Ubiquitous means it's everywhere, means code, conversation, documentation. We are reflecting that language and we are using that everywhere. This is about being ubiquitous, because this language is always within some boundaries. I'm using different words when I'm talking about shop management. I'm using different words when I'm talking about storage, and different words when I'm talking about accounting. And it's fine. What is important? Those boundaries are consistent. What does it mean consistent? It means that I cannot understand one word in this way or another. Example, with the product. If the storage and shop management would be combined into one subdomain, then our ubiquitous language is not consistent. Why is that? Because if I will talk with the person who is managing the storage, they will understand the product as something with the size and with the information whether it's fragile or not. From the shop management, they will care about the categories. They've got different understanding, even though I'm using the same word to point to the same product, because I can still talk about the battle. What's the problem? They've got different mental model in their head. The implementation is different. So the good ubiquitous language is put in the boundaries that eliminates such inconsistency. Another thing, it's understood by domain experts and developers, so it's all about this conversation. And use any word. As I said, that was my problem with this ubiquitous language. It's really supposed to be used everywhere. One hint, because on the very beginning it's quite challenging. So people have got a tendency to use synonyms, different words, and so on and so on. So on the very beginning we have to be really cautious and remind people that, okay, but we had different agreement, so this is the word we're supposed to use. Not the different one. It can be annoying, but later it gives you a couple of benefits. What are the benefits out of using Ubiquitous language? And here we are not talking even about the code. It's not even about mapping that into microservices. But this is really cool DDD strategical pattern. Thanks to that, you understand each other because there is no words that are outside of my mental model. We can explain what we know. If I talk and if I'm using the domain expert language, they understand what I'm telling them. If I'm telling that this operation cannot happen because transaction will roll back, it will be like, what? What is transaction? What is rollback? But if I will tell them that, unfortunately, we cannot put another product to the storage if we will reach this limit because there is not enough place in the storage, okay, I get it. Makes sense. Another thing, mutual help and cooperation. This is great. Usually we are quite comfortable with business that gives us requirements. But sometimes, not sometimes, when our understanding grows, when we really know the wording, know all the interactions, we can give them the feedback. Explain them why something is inefficient, why something is worthless to be implemented. And there is one story from my career when we estimated one feature. It was about messaging. There were a couple of messages that have to be, let's say, handled. And after our estimation, business was quite happy with investing something around 1-2 euro for half year to implement that feature. But I sit with my colleague and we did an analysis without them, but we had deep understanding of the domain. And after all, we come back to them and tell them, guys, this is only 10 messages per day. Hire someone. Do it manually. It will be cheaper. It won't cost you 2 million euro for half year. You can pay for that, I know, 10K euro per month, and it's still, you've got still money for ages. Why we were able to do that? Not because we are familiar with frameworks, language, infrastructure, and so on. No, we were quite okay with our understanding of the domain was high enough. Okay, so if the Ubiquitous language is something that is consistent, if those words or interactions place with each other, the question to you, can you find in these groups, those groups, the group that definitely doesn't fit the Ubiquitous language boundaries? The one, yeah, okay. Castle hugging pen. Maybe in the castle, once I will write some letter using pen, I will get hug, maybe. But yeah, it doesn't work. They are not working with each other. And this is exactly what we've got right now in our code base. Some words doesn't work with each other. Of course, it can be only my lack of understanding. But I can find something. You just found it. You just found it. You just told me that, man, most probably this is not the right boundaries for our Ubiquitous language. So there are two possibilities. I can tell you, okay, yeah, castle never goes well with, we are never using a pen when there is a castle and so on. I can tell you, yeah, you are right. Or I can explain you why it works together. We cannot lose. It's win-win situation, but either I will admit that you are wrong, either I admit you are right, or I will give you more insight. You will learn. Okay, so let's jump to the boundaries. Because those boundaries of Ubiquitous language have got a name. This is bounded context. And it helps us to reflect some domains in the solution space. So naive approach, usually good first step is, once I will find all the subdomains, I'm creating the bounded context for each and every subdomain. It is first step because it may change, depends on the problems you are solving. Sometimes bounded context will map 2 subdomains. Sometimes we'll have multiple bounded contexts for one subdomain. It's still okay, but good starting point is to have a one-to-one mapping. What is tricky? It's separate models. Why is that? Because we are solving different problem. Bounded context is the purpose of having bounded context is to solve particular problem or set of problems. So I'm creating a model that is good, but not perfect, to solve that problem. Like fridge represented as weight and height and depth in my planning. Examples of bounded context. So domain-driven design. Yeah, this is bounded context. We've got words like aggregate, bounded context. We've got ubiquitous language there. And those words doesn't exist in the school. In the schools, we've got classes, teachers, and so on. And it doesn't work, and the different wording we are using in the bank. We've got transfers, withdrawal, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it can go like that, totally different set of words. But it's not always like that. Sometimes it's all about details. So we've got a context, geography. It's about whole planet, let's say, mountains, oceans. But we can go into more details, and we may have a bounded context continent. Okay, and let's dive. And we are thinking about 7 continents, how they are differ with each other. Then we can go deeper. Europe, Poland, Zawiercie, Hotel Villa Verde, Blue Path. Each and every have good. Depends on the amount of details. It can be different context. So this is also a tricky one. So this is how we can map it. Shop management, we may have shop management bounded context with specific model. Storage model. Accounting model. Whether the one-to mapping always survives within the time? No. Because sometimes you will decide, okay, but there is only, I don't know, 1-2 classes here. It's really too small. It doesn't make sense to keep it separated. And you will merge that into with other bounded contexts. Fine, this is a good decision. Sometimes you will decide that, okay, I cannot have those two bounded contexts separated because there is too many interaction between them. And it's fine. Okay, if they are too chatty, maybe for your solution space, for you to solve particular problem, the model must be wider than one subdomain. But this is really good start. This is a start that will lead you somewhere. Why is that? Because if you will start with one-to-one mapping, later if you will decide to merge, remember, and it doesn't matter whether we are talking about function, class, module, repository, application. It's always easier to merge something rather than split it. So it's better to start with greater granularity and then merge it if needed, rather than do opposite. Benefits, we know what solves particular problem, because the model represents, gives you enough details to solve the problem. So you are not wondering, okay, why this attribute is here? Why in my I'm talking about paying supplier for the products, and why the product even have the name here? I don't care about the name. What's the price? I don't care about the description. I don't care about characteristic. Why they are here? There must be intention, and I'm start wondering to find out later that those attributes are meaningless for this particular problem. So my solution space doesn't reflect well the problem I'm solving. Before we will go to another try with our repository, I want to share with you a couple of hints how to define bounded contexts. So firstly, try to name it. Really, try to name it. Whenever I'm finding a group of objects that seems to be working together, I'm trying to find a name. Because sometimes I have no clear name. If that's the case, I'm going to my business, whoever the business is. It can be product owner, business analyst, customer, user, whatever. Someone who gives you information about the requirements. And I'm asking how they are working together. Why they are here together? Maybe because of my lack of understanding, maybe because they mislead me, because for them something was obvious. This is not like we are better than customer. We are better in a different context. We are software developers, but they are quite good with the business they are supporting. So let's get that knowledge from them whenever it's needed for us. Another try. If you will look, if you will spot the same word, and somehow it will have different meaning in various places, most probably you are talking about different context. What is a date? That's a rhetorical question, because each of you already knows the answer, each of you. But there is no guarantee that the answer is the same for each of you. Date can be in the calendar context, in a relationship, or maybe you are hungry and you are just thinking about date. So whenever you are see in your requirements, you spot the word that in different places means totally different thing, most probably you are talking about the different bounded context. Another thing, the same word that represents the same thing, but it's used differently. So I'm Sebastian. If you will take a look at the different contexts, there are different interaction. This is not only about words, verbs, it's also about interaction. If we are in the parenting context, my daughter thinks about Sebastian differently than when I'm in the context of marriage with my wife. There are different interaction. There is different knowledge. And of course, if we are in the context of delivery, if we are in the context of conference, people are thinking, are understanding Sebastian in different way. So if you see the one real object, but it's used totally differently in various places, in various requirements, that can be a hint that you are talking about different context. Another thing, sometimes we are using the same data, but to name it, we are using different word. It also depends on the requirements. So we've got a name and address. Sebastian Malaca is living somewhere. Yeah? Okay. And it doesn't change, but based on the context, sometimes it's a recipient, sometimes it's a contractor, sometimes it's a contact. If we are using the same, it doesn't have to be one-to-one, because sometimes it may be a little bit more, but it is enough to somehow worry us. Then it's worth to think whether we are really not talking about different contexts. Really, same words. Here you will send something to Sebastian Malaca on my address. Here I'm signing a contract, also Sebastian Malaca. I need to give my address. And in the address book you also write down my name, Sebastian Malaca, and address if needed. And another thing, no interaction. This is something you already found. Castle, pen hugging. Most probably this is, we may talk about different contexts. And I think the last, if I remember correctly, various names in the process. Sometimes we've got a long process. And during that process, Sebastian have got different names. So when I'm entering the shop, I'm a customer. I'm picking something, I'm putting that to the cart. When I'm going to the cash register, I'm a payer. I need to pay the money. Okay, if I bought products that will be delivered to me, then in the context of delivery, I'm a receiver. I'm no longer a customer. I'm no longer a payer. I'm a receiver. If the products are broken and I need to raise some complaint, in the context of complaint, I'm a consumer. Different word describes exactly the same person during long process. It also can give us information that we are talking about different contexts, the bounded contexts. Second try. Having all that just covered, let's try to do something with our requirements. So registering user account with login password, that will be quite straightforward because we are doing almost the same. So all the objects are here: user DTO, user service, user account. No fancy thing. We did an analysis, but first thing what I try to do is to name the context. User management. Okay, it can be changed later. Maybe it's not the perfect one. Maybe I will get rid of it later. But for the first moment, okay, it works. Okay, we are registering user management. Okay, let's go to creating an employee. Creating an employee, so first question, what kind of words I've got here? Agreement, we know that from the previous analysis. We've got an agreement, we've got an employee account. Why it's not in the user management? Because this is not a user. User is wider than an employee. There may be different users of our application. Employee is only one of them and have got some specific characteristic. Employee account, each and every employee have got an agreement. Great. So that's why I'm introducing different context. I may name Sebastian differently based on the context. So maybe Sebastian is working in our shop. And as when I have to pay him, I'm referring to him as an employee. But maybe also Sebastian is doing the shops in our shop. Is buying something, and they need to have the user account. Okay, it can work like that. What is the pros at this point of time? Just take a look at the user account. It's simple. Here, also straightforward. There is no confusion as we had in here with the optional agreement. It's eliminated because I know whether agreement is needed whenever we are talking about employee. What is worth to mention, if my decision would be to keep it still in the same table, no problem with that. In modular, if I'm working on modular monolith, it's fine. It can be the same table. I'm doing a model in my code base. Code base, it's separated from the database. So I still can keep those information in one table, document, whatever, in one place, and reflect that differently. Your ORM tools, frameworks, libraries will allow you for that. Let's move forward. So another quite straightforward requirement. From the classes perspective, adding product to the storage, also no difference in comparing to what we did with previous analysis. So the classes looks exactly the same, but I'm naming that differently. Why is that? So I'm putting that into different bounded context. Why is that? Because I'm challenging myself. Okay, I found 3 words, product size storage. How it works with agreement and employee account? Not at all. Okay, so how it works with user account? Not at all. Okay, so it deserves to have separate bounded context, dedicated bounded context. As I said, it may not survive later based on the amount of code written there or the conversation between bounded context, but this is good starting point. And we are moving forward. Placing the product on the shelf. Checkout revision. And we've got another context. Why is that? Because I'm using one of the hints I gave you. I'm taking a look at the product, and in the context of storage, those are the information about the product I need. So this is one mental model, my fridge, when I'm putting it. And another mental model is when I'm putting that on the shelf. Here I need only category to decide which shelf should be picked. And that's it. Nothing but that. Of course, once again, it can be stored in the same table. There is no problem with that, literally no problem with it. The same will happen with the card, but it's a little bit more tricky. So, first thing first, we are creating the new context. Why is that? Because this product is a little bit different than others, but just take a look, size and weight. This is something repeated comparing to those information. And this is the moment when I can start thinking, okay, so if there will be not enough code in here, and if there will be not enough code in here, maybe it makes sense to put them together. Then I'm looking at other words. So how storage would work with the card? Maybe not much. But this is a hint. I've got a subset of attributes that are used in 2 places. Okay, maybe it's worth to merge it. But as I said on the very beginning, when we were go through the theory, it's safer for you and easier for later maintenance to keep things separated rather than merge them together. Another thing that I forget to mention is the wording in the cart. So here, I don't have an add anymore. I'm putting something into the cart. The same with the shelf. I'm placing something, product on the shelf. And the same with the storage. So storage stays as it was previously. Add. I don't care about the consistency across the bounded context. Consistency must be within the context. This is what is really important. Of course, if there is no business-driven justification for using particular name, then consistency matters across the bounded context. But if there is any, let's keep it. Let's keep our domain model in a way to reflect the business. Another is customer pays. So customer pays as it was, but we've got a payment domain. So here also there is a lot of classes. The cool thing is the product is quite small. So I know what I think about. This is the only attribute from the product. I don't care about characteristic, category. Nothing else matters except this price in the context of payment. The tricky part starts when we are adding payment for the supplier. So what I will gonna change? Right now in the payment, I've got, so customer pays for the product. I've got a customer. I've got an online shop. Okay, I introduced this online shop. Both have got a bank accounts. Cool. But right now, I'm paying the supplier. And why it's trickier? Because right now I'm thinking, okay, it makes sense. It makes sense to be here. If customer is paying me and I'm paying supplier, it's supposed to be here. Yeah, makes sense. On the other hand, let's take a look at our main class. Here I've got a customer and online shop. So I'm start to think, okay, so in here, customer is paying, according to this requirement, customer pays for the products, so online shop receives money. Here we are paying for the products, so suppliers receive the money. So instead of introducing two additional attributes, I know that there are always two sides of the payments, regardless of the requirements. So maybe this is about changing the name during the process. When I'm entering the payment, I'm no longer customer, I'm no longer online shop, but depends on what part of the payment I am, this is my role. And this is what I'm doing with the last requirement, paying for the supplier. Checkout. We are introducing receiver and payer. And when we are talking about customer pays for the product, receiver is online shop, payer is customer. When we are talking about paying the supplier for the products, receiver is supplier and online shop is a payer. This one can be tricky, but except these new words that never appeared in here, we learn more. We just learn more because the question could be, okay, so here we've got a payment, here we've got a payment. What's the difference? Our domain expert will tell us, no, there is no difference. Just different person pays different person, and that's it. Okay, so it means we need new words, not supplier, not customer, not online shops. Something that is broader than that, or something that covers both those requirements. But what happens? And this is tricky one. Not yet in the bounded context. We just eliminated words like customer, online shop, and supplier. So usually I would get rid of that, but just to make it clear in the repository, we just eliminate those words because customer was here in the payment, online shop was in the payment, and supplier supposed to be also in the payment. We just lost that. What does it mean? Most probably, I've got some context that is not yet shown in my code base. So should I don't know, wait for more requirements? In that case, when I have something like that, usually I'm doing following thing. I'm listing the requirements that cause the problem. So in our case, those one. And I go to the domain experts and ask them, can you tell me a story? how we are reaching this situation, how it begin. And can you tell me this story? And during that story, most probably, they will tell us something about ordering. They will tell us something about customer in the shop who is choosing the products. Maybe they will give us this information. But once I will learn the whole journey, I can either eliminate that or put it into right context. So putting that into right context is something that it's quite safe, because then I've got this deep breath and okay, I'm fine, finally I found it. The most worrying is when I have to remove it. Is it bad that I'm removing something? No. Maybe this amount of details is not required into our solution space. Maybe it's additional detail that is irrelevant, because as I told you, model only simulates reality. Its model is always wrong, but it must be good enough to solve the problem. So if after the conversation with business, it turns out that I can solve the problems and I don't need to use this information, then I'm quite fine with removing them. Okay, so that was second try. What happened? There are pros and cons. There are benefits and the cost, as with everything. So what are the benefits? Clear boundaries. Now, if someone will tell you, okay, so let's modify employee agreement. You are looking at that employee agreement. Okay, let's go here. Employee agreement. You know you will find that here, that there. Okay, we need to extend our storages, or we will rent some storages from others. Okay, I know where to go. I'm just looking at the top level, and I know where the change must be done. In previous situation, okay, this is irrelevant right now. In this previous situation, I have no clue. And I'm talking only about domain. And I can bet that you can imagine that around the domain, there is a lot of other classes. I know REST controllers, listener, events consumers, producer, command handlers, databases, and so on and so on. I know some serialization, deserialization, yada, 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 notification. There is plenty more code. In such situation, there will be a lot of reading. And the reading, okay, we can like it or not, but the problem with no context approach is there will be a lot of reading that will lead us nowhere. It will just show us that, okay, Sebastian, you shouldn't waste your time to read that class because it's irrelevant for your problem. In here, I already know that this is my solution space for the given problem. I know that I'm in the right place. Another thing, consistency within boundaries. So there is no wondering, okay, how user account work with the product? What is the interaction there? No, I'm looking at the domain for particular context, and I see those words work with each other. Cool. Easy to find the code to change, as I said, and it reflects the language. Right now we've got all wording. To be honest, we've got even more words than in previous example. We didn't only bring the words like employee that we eliminated in first try. We added some new, like receiver and payer. What is the cost? As you see, more classes. Yeah, so nothing to challenge. Here, definitely, we've got more classes. Many more. Many domain models. And this is tricky because you need to change the way how most of developers are operating. Usually it's like table, entity, use it. Cool. And here, table, entity, 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 entity. It's trickier. It's something different. You need to learn that. Another thing, many architectures. What does it mean? If each and every bounded context may have, supposed to have, different model, they may have different architectures. So you need to maintain that. You need to solve those problems. With a monolith, when you've got everything in the domain package, you have got only one architecture of your code. With a bounded context, you may have many of those. And yeah, this is against our habits. This is something new to learn. It will slow you down. And unfortunately, you cannot overcome that. Whatever new thing you will gonna learn, framework, approach, technique, language, it will slow you down. There is no difference with using bounded context in your code bases. But is it better? I believe yes. And why is that? Because more classes, this is something I can survive. But because the problem is not, Ivo said earlier today that you are reading code more often than you are writing it. Yeah, and this is true. Adding new class is quite rare, but reading the code is something we are doing all the time. With bounded contexts, there is less code to go through, less code to understand. And most probably, the code you are reading is already in the context of the solution you are looking for, the solution you want to modify. So this is really cool. Additionally, hidden complexities makes problem more difficult to understand. What are the hidden complexities? Here we got one product. We learn a lot about the product. We know a lot about the product. And we may have an impression that right now we can talk with the business quite well when we think about the products. But unfortunately, complexity doesn't come only with with too much information, but also with not enough information. Here, we've got many information, but unfortunately too much. Because if I will never, based on the requirements we just analyzed, I will never use all those attributes with the business, during the business conversation. There is not a single business representative who will understand the product in that way. I just introduced the complexity because I know the product. This is my definition of the product. This is my model of product. But we are there, our softwares need to support business problems. And this is a problem if there is not a single person from the business who understands that like that, who use the product like that. We've got someone from storage, and they are aware of that. We've got someone who is managing the shop, they are aware of that. There are someone who are helping to decide which product to pick, they are aware of that. We are paying for the product, they are aware of that. No one except business developer, the software developer understand the product in such a way. This is a complexity we just introduced. Our solution, instead of solving the problem, except solving the problem, introduce yet another problem. And the problem is that we won't be able to determine about which product our business is talking about. So even though there is more classes, there is more packages, folder, directories, however you want, you name it, there is less code to read. It's easier to find the code you have to change, and it's easier to understand that code because you know that whatever you are reading is relevant. And what else? Just take a look at the time. Okay, still got a couple of minutes. And this is not all. When you introduce business context in your boundary context in your monolith. Because it can be monolith, as I said, it can be covered with one database, no issue at all. You can do more. You can pick the right architecture. I shown that as a cost, and it is, but let's imagine we want to introduce some fancy, sexy, nowadays architecture, which is named clean architecture. Everyone love it. We want to introduce it here. We want to introduce that for all the requirements in here. A lot of work. Here, there will be less work. Let's assume we want to introduce our architecture on it here. Okay, less requirements. The work will be faster. But it's not only about the speed of introducing the change. Also, we are not forced to use one code architecture. What you see in here, this is one architecture already, like component-based architecture. You already have one architecture, but we can introduce more. How? How to determine that? Usually, in bounded context, you can divide your context into 3 categories. Generic, which means usually, in most cases, it's something you already written a couple of times in your life. Maybe there is product on the shelf you can buy. Maybe there is product in your company that you can use. Usually, user management, payments, those are employee management. This is not something you are writing from scratch. There are products that are supporting that. You will use them. What does it mean? If you are using something that already exists, I don't need to have heavy architecture here. Employee management, payments. It will be only facade on top of some, I don't know, REST API or API from a library. It will be straightforward. To be honest, in those places, no architecture is still good architecture, because there will be not much code there. On the other side, we've got our core domains. Core domains is something that drives our business, and in our case, most probably it will be shop. Why it's worth to find those core domains, the domains that are bringing our business value, that are there to make a difference between our competitors. Thanks to that domains, our customers are picking us, not them. If you will find those contexts, in our case, most probably shop domain, maybe cart domain. Those are the places where we can use heavy architecture. Why is that? Because heavy architecture allows us to refactor, modify the code quite easily, safer than other architectures. And if those contexts are driving our business, it means they will change a lot. Why is that? Because this is where money are. If there are money there, our business will come up with a lot of crazy idea how to make more money. So that's why most probably those will be our context. Here, worth to use high-level context. And for others, in example in here, storage domain, you can pick some layered architecture. In example, it gives you some boundaries in the code, domain outside of outer world, but it's not as heavy as any kind of port and adapters architecture. This is one thing that we can do. Another thing, we can assign the teams. Once we will do such an exercise I just presented, and if there are multiple teams that are working on our product, we can assign those where we've got mostly juniors or not experienced developer, new developers. We can assign them to the architecture where we are communicating with other products, like user management, employee management. Why is that? Because it will be easy. There will be not too much code to write. On the other hand, who's supposed to work on the domains where we know this is our foundation for the business, which is cart and shop bounded context in this example. I will put there our best developers, the most skilled one, those who understand why it's worth to think about the design, why it's worth to cover your code with a test. Those are developers who I will put there. And if there is someone in the middle, I will put them in our case, into this storage domain, so also in the middle, because thanks to that, they will have a possibility to learn. This is not as crucial, but it's still something that have to be introduced. Another thing, infrastructure change. Even though we can start with monolithic architecture and have this modular monolith in here, then we can decide, okay, most our traffic goes to this domain. Okay, instead of scale everything, let's extract that. It will be simple. I won't say it will be simple, but it will be simpler because you already have the boundaries. You are extracting the code and try to run it. There will be somehow communication. There may be some also the communication between those bounded contexts, but also somehow abstracted because there are boundaries between them. So you will instead of you will only need to worry about those communication, which means instead of directly calling the class, you will call, I don't know, another REST service. So it simplifies infrastructure change. It helps you with risk management. Most probably, some of you already experienced a situation when business tells you, okay, the deadline is close. We won't have time for everything. It happens for me sometimes, which leads to the situation I'm not able to cover with test everything. I'm not able to validate whether everything is perfectly written, not even perfectly, whether it's good enough to be released. Okay? I can, of course, fight with that or accept because it won't change. At least I didn't find a way. So how context will help me with that? They will tell me what is the crucial part. If the times passes and I've got, I don't know, week, and I made the changes in card, employment, payments, card domain, because this is our driver for the business, this is the place where I will put the most effort from the testing perspective. It helps me to mitigate the risk. And the last, but not the least, legacy and the debt maintenance. If I will have such separation, I know where to put my effort. Code will root. Code will get worse within a time, even if you won't touch it. So card domain and shop domain, because this is our most important bounded context, those are the contexts where I'm putting the greatest effort from the maintenance perspective. This is where I'm refactoring when I've got the time. Thanks to separation of bounded context, highlighting those boundaries, the decision is easier. I'm not looking for the classes that would be good to improve. I'm just going to the most important context. And feedback and understanding. So whenever we are talking and someone will tell, the domain expert will use new word, whenever they will use new word, we can ask them, what does it mean? And why this question is okay in this situation with bounded context, and it's not so great and straightforward without bounded context. Because with bounded context, we are eliminating the translation between the domain experts and us. What the translation we had in our no-context approach? User account. User account is employee, user, supplier, customer. We don't know what they are talking about because we are mapping all of them into user account. So if there will be yet another user account, we will automatically translate that to that. Also, the product. There is a lot of mapping here because product means something different in various contexts. So we are helping ourselves to build better understanding. What next? Couple of books. If I would recommend one, Event Storming, still in progress. Hopefully someday it will gonna be written fully. This is different technique. Helps you to find a bounded context. And if you are interested in domain-driven design, I would recommend to start with domain-driven design distilled. This is a really good entry point. Okay, and we have time. Hope we have a time. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to. Okay, hope I will do that. Oh man. Mm-hmm. This is known when the project is close to an end. Okay. How to work with that, along the process? Excellent observation. So firstly, I will tell you that it's not so rare that you don't know all the requirements. I would say rather it's usual that you don't know all the requirements. So to be honest, bounded context helps you with that. Why is that? Because you are putting your new requirement. If you don't know whether the implementation should be placed in the existing context or in some new context, I will recommend to put in some new context. Why is that? Because if you will learn more and you will decide to, okay, I was wrong, it's supposed to be in different place, then it's easy to merge. If it will evolve and you will learn enough to state, okay, it should be in different context, then you've got your solution.
Okay, so, but it does make sense to have like limited or small contexts, right? Because it's easier to merge, as you mentioned, rather than divided them. But if something is still evolving, does it make sense to like wait till some point to merge those contexts? Because the objects or the entities, whatever, can move from one place to another and another.
Okay.
You know.
So remember that bounded context in its solution space. Why it's important to remember? Because it means there are some people here. If I will present one problem, all of us will come up with a solution. So we will introduce some implementation, and each and every will be different. So why I'm saying that? Because it means that when you will implement something, at some point of time you may make a decision, no, okay, it makes sense to merge it. Why is that? Because you are relying on your experience from past jobs for past situation, and you are relying on the experience in your project. So it's not like you need to wait till the very last moment. You need to wait till the moment you are more confident, I'm not saying sure, but more confident that merge is better than keep it in separation. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so one question in the front.
So I would like to ask, what is proper order?
To bounded context. Okay. Okay. So, this is the best phrase. It depends. So, on what it depends. Firstly, it depends on the size of the project, and how I determine the size of the project. Usually, when I'm joining the project, it's already in bad shape, and the first thing I'm trying to learn is what kind of subdomains, bounded contexts are there. So I'm talking with people, and when I've got some naive map, it doesn't have to survive within a time, but this is some input. If I've got those bounded contexts listed, then I'm making the decision whether strategical or tactical is better. Okay, so how am I making that decision? If the amount is 2-3 bounded context, then tactical is good approach. If the amount is 4 and more, then I'm firstly focusing on bounded context. Why is that? Because you need to remember that changing everything at once requires a lot of work. And if you will decide to introduce firstly bounded context, so move the classes, you are minimizing the amount of code you need to improve. And usually, not always, but usually, when you are starting, so let's assume we agreed to move the code to bounded context. So whenever you will work on, I don't know, product, you will put the piece of code into right place. So either storage, shop, something. After 3 up to 6 months, depends on the size of the project, amount of teams, you will see that whenever you are working with the product, usually you are in one or another context. And this is the moment when you may consider using tactical DDD patterns. Because tactical DDD patterns is not, it never supposed to be your default approach. Because it's heavy, difficult to understand. So you should use it in the context that changes a lot. what is, and then last, hopefully I answered, but last hint is you need to be patient because such a journey takes years, usually, unfortunately. Of course, if you will convince your business to stop the project and do the refactoring, then you are on the right track. But usually when you are doing this refactoring, when you are delivering new features, it takes some time. Hope that answers the questions. Okay. Okay.
First of all, thanks for the presentation. Great job. Today I'm literally this guy from the title. I lose somewhere part of my brain. Maybe I just missed the explanation, but how will I know that this product is the same product in other context? Where is this information?
Okay, firstly, this is solution space, so it's up to the team. If I'm creating the design, this is my idea for bounded context. If you would do that with your team, there is most probably the context will be different. That's the first thing. Second, unfortunately, it's never as straightforward because sometimes it's quite obvious. Price, okay, cool,
But you know this today. What tomorrow? Maybe you forget about it.
Oh, okay, so I'm quite bad with foreseeing.
Our model should explain us that this is the same.
Yeah, so we've got ID if this is what you are thinking about, because models doesn't have to tell me, oh, here it will be better with employment. As you saw, employee account refers to user table. User account refers to user tables as well. So it's even more tricky than the product. But the model doesn't have to tell you that, okay, in that context, I represent that concept in that way and in different way. This is not the purpose of model. Model is here to show you, to give you a possibility to efficiently solve the problem you are facing. So regarding the references between particular entities from one context, as in here, and references to another, you can always look for the table if that's needed.
Okay. If I can, another question. Where I should put information, how to transform, for example, customer to receiver? Who will know about that? This customer is payer in the other context.
Okay, so that will be the last question because I just received the information. I will answer that. So once again, if I see that some words disappeared, I'm getting back to the business and I ask them, okay, can you tell me the full story? Just explaining the full story from the very beginning to the very end when we are paying supplier or where customer is paying us. And they are starting. And I'm validating, okay, I have it covered in the code, I have it covered by some context, I have it covered. And there are two options. Either after the explanation, I will say, okay, everything is covered. In that situation, I'm removing the words. I don't need it. This is the words, they use it because their understanding of the domain is better than mine. But those are the details based on my validation. That's why I try to hear the story. Based on my validation, it seems this is insignificant details, not needed for us. I don't want to put that into code. Why is that? This is the same reason why with wife we use only depth and width, and we didn't include the width and depth, and we didn't include the weight of the furniture. Weight was irrelevant. It was only misleading detail in this solution space. So in our case, if I validated whole journey and there is no customer needed, I'm removing that because this is not needed at this point of time. Of course, it may change later. If I didn't answer the question,
I'm not sure, but maybe we will talk later.
We can talk later. Thank you very much for keeping you longer than expected.